Would you open your manual to page 1, the very first page there? And if you have not put your... Now, the manual would be this brown book. You also have some placemats there to be used with your children and your family at home as you teach through each chapter to them. First thing I would suggest you do is put your name in the book. There's a little box there. This book belongs to, and if you'd write your name there. And then you'll see there a very familiar and a profoundly important verse spoken to Asa, king of Judah. For the eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth to show himself strong on behalf of them whose heart is perfect toward them. But do you know when that verse, you probably heard that verse, do you know when that verse was spoken to King Asa? Did you know that it was spoken to him after he violated God's ways? And the seer had come to him and said this, and it was like God saying, "Oh, King Asa, if only you'd have followed my ways. You see, my eyes run to and fro when I was looking for you. If you would just follow my way, I would have shown myself strong on your behalf." But because King Asa didn't, he received consequences and judgment in his life. God is always looking for a man with a perfect heart. Now, a perfect heart doesn't mean that we do everything perfect. A perfect heart is one that continually seeks after God, seeks after his ways. And Elijah was a man like that. You turn the page with me. Just as Elijah said to the people of his day, God would say to us, "How long halt ye between two opinions?" Let's look at this together. The great prophet Elijah thundered his challenge to the wavering multitudes of his day. If the Lord be God, follow him. But if Baal, then follow him. And the people answered him not a word. Wonder why they didn't answer a word. I think it's because they were standing between the two. They didn't know what to say. They say, "But God, we want to follow your ways, but your ways aren't logical. And the world's ways are more attractive." And so we just don't answer him a word. Elijah then proposed a test. 2 altars would be built. The prophets of Baal would call on their God, and Elijah would call on his God. Whichever one answered by fire would be the one whom they would serve. You remember the story where Elijah went up on Mount Carmel and called together the 450 prophets of Baal and told them to build their altar and said, "Call upon Baal and send down fire to consume your sacrifice. And then I'll build an altar and call upon God to do it. We'll see who God is." And you remember they built their altar there and they began to call out, oh Baal, show your power." It's like today, we might be calling out, "Oh, humanism, show your power in our lives." And they called, and I thought it was funny how Elijah would walk around. By noon, Baal hadn't answered. And so Elijah walked around and began to mock him. He said, "Well, where is Baal? Maybe he's out taking a nap. You need to yell louder. Maybe he's on vacation." And they began to cut themselves. And it says the blood began to gush from their bodies as they cried out to their false god. And by evening time, nothing happened. And so then Elijah built his altar, and he just simply called upon God to demonstrate his great and mighty power. And you know what happened? The fire came down from heaven and licked up not only the sacrifice, but the stones, the dust, it says, and all the water. And this was after he'd had all three times barrels of water poured upon that sacrifice. Continue with me here, if you will. In every age, God's supernatural power will be tested against man's ability to work out his own solutions. And that's the basis of humanism. And I believe if Elijah was here today, he would say to us as God's people, if humanism be God, follow humanism. But if God be God, follow God in his ways. You know, one of the reasons I think we don't follow God's ways is because they don't seem logical. And I might encourage you to jot down beside this paragraph here, Isaiah 55, 8 and 9, where God says, "My ways are not your ways, my thoughts are not your thoughts. But my ways and my thoughts are higher, even as the heavens are higher than the earth." They really are the opposite of our natural inclination. One of the most important tests will involve our finances. God's challenge to us is, "Prove me now herewith with tithes and offerings, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing, that there will not be room enough to receive it." He wants to demonstrate his power through our lives. God is looking for men who will obey his principles of finance and demonstrate to a skeptical, unbelieving world that he lives, that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. Men of such scriptural convictions will not only influence history of our own day, but will raise up the foundations of many godly generations. Let's allow God to show himself strong through our lives and through our finances.